Good evening, everybody. Welcome to League of Extraordinary Inventors. I'm your host, Mike from Faraday Research. It is Friday night. It is September 6, 2024. Welcome to the show. And we got a regular panel on tonight. We got Nathan, we got Ben, and we got Philip, and we've got Lulu. Welcome to the show, everybody. I hope everybody had a productive and good week.
Very good.
Awesome. So I guess let's start off tonight. By the way, live chat is open. If you guys have any questions, comments for our cast, please do so in the live chat. And I'll also try to post it on the screen there so everybody can see the questions coming up for our panel. I guess we'll start off with Philip. I think he's the one that has the most stuff going on right now that's positive.
Yeah. Well, I'll share my screen actually. Just one sec.
All right.
Share screen. Can you see my WhatsApp screen?
Should be coming up here in a second. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we got your WhatsApp there.
Okay, it's loading. One sec. I preloaded it before, so it would be ready, but it loads again, I guess. I mean, I'm not at home right now, so I'm using a Mac, so it's a little bit slower than my home computer, but
you're on the road.
Yeah. Come on, you can make it.
Don't worry, we're patient. You're almost having as much problems as I'm having.
At least it wasn't like last week, or the week before, I should say.
Yeah, I just preloaded the WhatsApp, and so it's not gonna hang. And here I am loading it again. So I'm just gonna start with what I did last week. Yeah, so that's I did the electrolysis experiment.
Yeah, I seen this on. Yeah, I seen that. Yeah, that looks really good, man.
Yeah, it's the problem with electrolysis is it's 3 times not efficient. You need too much energy to generate the output energy.
It needs a lot of current.
By 3 times. So it's 3 times cost ineffective. But I found a way to speed up the hydrogen generation by a big factor, and it's pretty simple. So that's a secret sauce here, and that's what I did last week, and I'm pretty happy about that. It was quick, it was positive experiment, and
so what's the key thing to produce more with less energy?
The key thing, that's the thing. If I tell you any components or anything, you'll figure it out very easily.
Right.
It's about the electric fields of the water molecule that you can change the dielectrics, things like that. Okay. So it's a way to change the dielectrics of the water molecules. and then it causes it creates a more efficient way to split
So
the
it's
hydrogen atoms from the
so is
water.
it's drawing less current off the power supply.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So
Now is it
I put some tape here because I measured all my attempts, and I could see that with a small change in the dielectrics, I could increase the production by 150%.
wow?
And
That's big.
yeah, and I can go even higher than that easily. So
Okay. So is it have to do with what you're putting in the water itself? Like a lot of people would put sodium hydroxide or some caustic acid into it to make it create more hydrogen. But I've learned from my past experiments it creates a lot more heat that way. Is that am I in the ballpark or
yeah, it's about the water molecules. And yeah, I think I said enough. You'll figure it out pretty easily. But maybe one day I'll make it public. I don't know. We're gonna try to make money out of it first. Um, and
Still
that
don't want
was
to make it too easy for us.
yeah, that was my book. I did some cleaning in my mom's house this week actually. I found that my first edition of my book that I released in 2009, so you can see it's not printed anymore, but you can see the date here is 2000 December 2008. So I have this theory, this finite theory going on for a long time,
yeah?
and that was it. And this morning, actually, I visited the lab where my experiment is being scaled up.
Right.
And this is my experiment, the gallium vortex.
Right on.
This is my gallium vortex, and it's going to be put on some sort of support on top of balances because these are digital scales, and I don't want a magnetic field to interfere with the digital scales. So we have to put some sort of distance between the scale and the apparatus. So that's why it has to be put on a little bit above with support. And there are three scales because we want to measure the precision as well. We want to make sure that it's not precessing or anything like that. We want to make sure that the three balances measures the same weight shift equally. So and that's my um, voltmeter right here. And that can that well the power supply, sorry, the power supply that can only generate 50 amps. But we're gonna use welders that can generate a lot more current. Hopefully, we'll go up to 200 amps, and we'll measure the weight shift and all the details that are coming out of it. So next Thursday of next week, we should have this experiment finally done because I've been waiting for a while because August everybody's in vacation, blah blah blah. There's people going back to school, so it's a slow month, but now it's going to be finally done on Thursday of next week. So we should have results on your next show. Um, on your next show, we should be on Friday next week. We should be ready.
Yep.
So,
Hey, Justin, welcome to the show. It's been a
Hey,
few
Mike.
weeks.
Hey, Phil.
yeah.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Great to see you again.
Yeah, awesome.
So I have some comments and questions in regards to the experiments we're doing. So I've, seen a lot of research in this area, or some research. There are other people. I don't know if you're familiar with Maury King's book.
Yep.
His
Yep.
presentations at Tesla Tech, and the one experiment, he was saying that had the most effect was they were actually using the mist makers, where they're doing sound vibrations to excite the water first, and then do the electrolysis. And the results is they were doing a mixture of 1% alcohol and or gasoline, I forget which one, and 99% water. So it wasn't that caustic, and they were able to use regular spark plugs before they had to use high-powered spark plugs, and they were getting very good. That was the best results that Maury King had seen.
Oh, yeah.
So he talked about that. So all of that goes along with, what I was telling you before, that everything's vortical, and it's the spin of the particles, and that you can actually speed up the spin. And there's different ways of doing that. You can use electrolysis, you can use sound, you can use light, you can use capacitors. There's all sorts of different things, crystals, etc., to speed things up. And then when you have those particles, everything's set up, they can have stronger explosions. And so I don't know if you're familiar with Gerald Pollack's work on the fourth phase of water, and he was basically putting water next to capacitive materials, and capacitors have this vertical behavior, and they speed things up. So you may get better results if you're focused on trying to speed up the spin using the sound vibrations of the mist makers, or of light vibrations, or capacitive materials, because the material itself, it's basically, because you've got a conductor next to a dielectric, the conductor is pulling all of the electrons from the lower levels of the dielectric. And in subquantum kinetics, which is sort of like subparticle physics, below the particle level, particles, as opposed to jumping from one point to another, they're basically made up of a vortex of reacting and diffusing subparticles. We call them etherons. So when the particles are pulled up, they disassemble because they're being pulled out of the atomic structure that's keeping them in this reactive diffusion balance with all the other particles. And so when they disassemble up here, the atoms have to rebalance, so they have to have new electrons appearing at the lower level. So you get this continual pull of ether, and when all the particles are forming in the lower levels, they're gaining more spin. So and there's a lot of experiments. If you know the APEC group, Charles Bueller, I think, or it's Bueller, the first name. He's been doing all these experiments with capacitors, and so they were putting electric flow in it, and they're getting all this antigravitic behavior. But he found when he turned off the electricity, the capacitors still had that capability. They still had the same anti-gravity effect, not a change. The electricity turned off. So it was the capacitor itself. It's the materials that are actually creating that. He's optimizing the materials and also putting a charge in there. But once it's turned off, same anti-gravitic effect, same speed up of the spin of the particles. So if you can use other things like sound, like that was the mist makers do that. They're basically vibrating everything, so they're spinning everything up faster. So then you electrolyze it and spin it more, then they're going to have a bigger explosion. And whenever particles are being spun faster, the reactions can happen more effectively.
Oh, interesting.
That's a way. So there's numerous different ways you can look at experimenting this way to try and increase the power of those explosions by increasing the spin. And there's a lot of different mechanisms to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna try to because I'm going to a conference in December in Texas, and I'm gonna try to get the attention of the defense there for things like that, and if they start playing games or whatever, I'll just make everything public again. So so I don't really care. I'm gonna try to make money, and if it doesn't work, I'll make it public. So
You're doing that HHO splitting of the water molecule, right?
yeah, apparently we can polarize the water molecule as well, and it speeds up the process using magnets. But I never tried that. Maybe it's possible. I don't know.
Because
But-
the HHO creates like a really, really good combustion. And that for the Department of Defense, they might like that because that could be turned into thrust.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
the hydrogen's rocket fuel. That's the main component in rocket fuel. So if you have a
Yeah.
cheap, economical way of producing hydrogen for rocket fuel or whatever, or to power your Jeeps and transport vehicles, aircraft, whatever, then obviously, if the system's 150% more efficient than what we have on the market today, then obviously that's going to be more feasible for them to utilize something like this.
And it's inexpensive. Like we're talking about maybe a decimal fraction of the price of however they're extracting it to make fuel.
Yeah, exactly. Because, well, it's 150 just with a minor change, so I didn't maximize the change. I can go to 300% easily or 400%.
Yeah.
So yeah.
See, I think the real thing that held this industry back is the storage medium for the hydrogen, because you got to get into high pressure cylinders and cryogenic and all that kind of stuff to conceal it. But years ago, there was a guy, well, a lot of people probably know who he is, Bob Lazar. He had a method of storing hydrogen in what's called a metal hydride. This metal hydride basically sucks up hydrogen like water in a sponge, right? It's a solid material. One problem. It's one component that they use in nuclear bombs to hold the hydrogen gas. So it's a controlled substance. So to get it on the consumer market, you can't, because it's a controlled good. So Bob was trying for years to try to get the company that manufactured it, saying, what his plans were to make these storage devices for automobiles. So unless he had a big backer to fork out a lot of money, the tank would probably cost about $12,000 to produce, right? So if he had a big backer, say like Ford, GM, and Chrysler, they all got together and dumped a piss pot of money into the company to produce hydrogen fuel cell tanks. And the other part is too, what's great about the cell or the tank, you could shoot it with a gun with hydrogen in it, it won't blow up because it's infused in the metal hydride. So the only way you release it is there would be like a heater element in the cell. When it heats up, the hydrogen gas dissipates or basically vaporizes and comes off the metal hydride, and then you pump it into the engine. So as far as safety is concerned, it's incredibly safe. And that's even more the reason why they should get this out. Because honestly, I would see hydrogen being used in vehicles more feasible than an electric car at this point, because of the fact that we just don't have the infrastructure in place to handle that amount of electricity.
Exactly.
So,
we don't have. We can't supply the electricity to
demand. You can't do it. We don't have enough power generation.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is set up a small solar array outside your house. The unit that he had to create the electrolysis was about the size of a washing machine, and he just filled it up with tap water, and within a couple of days he has his tanks full. So
Yeah.
you could actually produce your own hydrogen at your house.
Exactly.
So-
Yeah.
Is just containing it is the problem, you know, because
Right. So
dangerous by itself, you know, to
exactly.
have,
So
yeah.
so if you had this metal hydride tank, that would cure all the problems overnight. But
Is
until
the
the
United
government,
States the only place where they manufacture this metal hydride metal?
that's a good question. I really don't know. I imagine anybody who's a nuclear power probably has this metal hydride material.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a good question. I really don't know the full complete answer to that, but that'd be something to look into. But I think that's the big barrier I see with hydrogen right now is storage media. Where are you going to store it?
And you guys said you need like a car manufacturer to sponsor it?
Yeah, if they dump, say, $100 billion, say Ford, GM, and Chrysler get together and dump this
Well,
money at that company and say, here's $100 million, make us some tanks that are safe.
Well, I know this company. I know the owner. He manufactures something called Eve Fleets, and it's a work truck that can be used like within a factory. You know, not like on the road, but they use it like if let's say you have a big factory and you want to get supplies from one part of it to the end. They use these trucks called. He manufactures these things called Eve Fleets. And this guy is best friends with Donald Trump. So, I could call him up and, his name is Brooke Agnews. He was one of the engineers that first space rover on Mars. He had something to do with it. Like he was one of the engineers. But we're talking about like a long time ago. But I still have his contact, and I went to one of his conferences in Sedona, Arizona at one time. It's called something to Cosmos to the Stars, and that was part of Trump's Space Force. When he was putting his Space Force together. Yeah,
Yep.
well, I was part of that. I went to Sedona, Arizona, and participated in in that whole stuff, and that's where I met Mr. Agnews. Actually, I met him before, but he invited me to that. And, I went there for like a couple of days. There were many speakers, even people from the Department of Defense and just all like deep state. Like, I mean, if I show you the lineup, you'd be like, wow, how'd you even get in that? But, I got in that, I listened to their lectures and, very informative stuff. And I think that's where my journey really started with, for the free energy and stuff like that. And but yeah, I mean, if you guys are really interested, I will try to connect. Maybe invite him one time to this show and say, hey, we'd like you to listen to what we have and see if you can help us out, with this. If you guys are interested, let me know. I mean, yes or no, so I can start. Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Then I will try to contact him this week and say I've got a group of friends, very good people, and we're working on this project, and we need your help. And remember, he's best friends with Donald Trump. Again, our next president. So it would help, with
Yeah.
yeah. All right,
Well,
sounds good.
anything we can do to get assistance at this point is and I love the Space Force idea. I actually applied, but they wanted me to work in California, so that was a move for me. But no, it's I'd love to work for the Space Force and go
It's
up
not
there.
about applying. Really, it's I don't think it's a department you really work at. I think like when I went there, I think I'm still part of it, and I don't even know. You understand?
Yeah,
Like
you have to get an invite.
Yeah, I got an official invite to it.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Salvatore Payas is part of that too. Eh?
I'm gonna go back to that lineup, and I will dig that paper, and I'll show you guys like who was there, because there was a lot of people.
I'm pretty sure Salvatore Payas is still because
Maybe.
he did a couple of shows. I think the last one he did with what's his name, guy on X. What's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue.
Rogan?
Joe Rogan.
Ashton Forbes. He was on Ashton Forbes.
Ashton Forbes. Okay.
Yeah, he was on his show, and then after that, he disappeared. So
Well, you know they don't want these people to be public either with this
No.
because they become targets. You know, so a lot
Yeah.
of these individuals will never really tell you if they're part of the program or not because you know it puts a target on their back.
yeah, exactly. I think he
Yeah.
kind of spoke out too much, and then they kind of came down on him and said, "Okay, that's the end of your podcasting days," because
Yeah.
he was on APAC a few times.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what happened.
I saw him. I think they did not just APEC. I think there was another channel that did an interview with him. I watched that. Salvador Paez. He's a very knowledgeable guy, but very quirky. You know, very quirky, and it's hard to take him seriously, but very knowledgeable. Honestly, I mean, I searched a lot of the stuff that he was talking about, and it's very interesting. Technology that what he's talking about and physics too. It wasn't like real deep physics. And so, yeah. But yeah, I will, that's what I'll be working on this week. Maybe trying to get in contact with Mr. Agnes and telling him we're doing this show and give him the link to it and, have him hopefully join. And, he might help us a bit with that.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see what he has to say. But you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know too.
Sure.
He could be under a lot of NDAs too, eh? So,
But at least he might guide us. He might point us to who do we go talk to,
Yeah,
But
that's true.
when it comes to controlled good like metal hydride, and that's used in the nuclear industry quite often. It's a controlled substance, and it's actually illegal to even possess it at the if you're outside of that jurisdiction, right? Just like a common Joe Blow like me can't go to the local laboratory and purchase this stuff, right?
Is Canada? Is there restrictions in Canada about on this stuff?
Oh God, yeah. It's the same thing. Like I work for a company. We did a lot of work for Ontario Nuclear. And we had federal officers on site while we were doing the work, actually watching us as we work. So,
Well, the metal, it's kind of funny when you think that metal hydride, it's a metal. It's not like the active ingredient in anything. It's just the ingredient to house something active. You get
it's
it?
controlled.
Which is kind of weird.
Yeah, it's deemed as a controlled good and probably military as well. So, the past history with great inventions gets seized by the military industrial complex because they don't feel that we should have these materials to play with. Right? So that's kind of
Metal
part of
hydride.
the suppression.
I was going to say in the water thing, you want to take and attract all the oxygen away from the hydrogen once you break it.
Yeah.
And because it reconstitutes itself back into water.
That's
So if
right.
you do not separate and charge it and separate it, you're going to have a problem even collecting it correctly. So that's going to be one of the biggest tasks. You can use anything to separate it, but because it reforms so fast, you have to separate the two gases once they become gases.
That's right.
I think the positive extracts hydrogen and the negative the oxygen, or vice versa. I'm not sure.
You need
have
high
to do it.
voltage electricity to create a charge on it in order to pull it separate from the other one.
Yeah. As soon as you crack it, you have to separate it.
I saw a bunch of DIY videos on how to do this. It's not that hard. It really isn't that hard.
No, you can do it at home with two pieces
Yeah.
of wire and a 9-volt battery. That's how easy it is.
I saw somebody making doing this with those thermos, because it has the two metal thermoses, because it has like the cap and the bottom part. They're insulated. They're separated by an insulator, And so they use the two parts. They put the positive on one and then negative on the other, and it worked because they use the straw to funnel the gas out through. So I'll watch the video again. I'll try to replicate it. I won't promise I'll be ready next week, but I'll probably want to replicate this because it looked really cool. And it was very little parts, and it wasn't, the concept wasn't that hard, and there wasn't like a lot of things that I needed to solder on or anything like that. It's just connect, you connect parts and you put them to a good battery, and that's it. I could even use the wall plug too. I don't even have to use a battery for it. It will still work.
I'm just gonna scoot up for a quick cigarette. You guys just carry on.
Very cool.
Yeah, but I'm very excited, Phil, about your project. Like I have my fingers crossed. Hopefully they'll fund you for this project.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I just learned that there's a bunch of financial resources in Canada to fund the type of project I'm doing. So I'm gonna apply there. No, nobody told me until last week. So I'm gonna try to get funding, and if my anti-gravity experiment is cost effective, then I'm gonna definitely commercialize that as soon as I can, and create some sort of engine. That's gonna be cool. But
So,
yeah.
are you trying to create pressure on those plates? Is that what that experiment is? The one with the different scales?
Yeah. So actually, the apparatus, the black disc that you saw. It's a magnet, and there's gallium inside between the magnet, and I'm gonna inject electric current of 200 amps. That's gonna create magnetohydrodynamics, so that's gonna make the gallium move in a vortex. And I already measured it, and the vortex create a gravitomagnetic field, and the gravitomagnetic field creates an acceleration vector that adds up on top of the gravity. So either you increase the mass, the weight, or either you decrease the weight of the apparatus, depending on the direction the gallium is spinning. So yeah, that's what I want to show clearly next week using because it was working with 50 amps, 100 amps, but I was using mechanical scales, so it's not quantitative, So now I'm gonna use digital scales and much greater current, and I want to prove that it's cost effective, it works, and it's cost effective. So stay tuned for next week, man. I keep saying that, but now is the real week. Next week, next Friday,
I'm excited.
I'll have the result. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And we wish you luck in trying to get funding or get your project picked up by somebody.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's I have a big time bill to pay back, and I need to pay back the lab that's doing the experiment. But I'm supposed to have funding for in Montreal. They give funding for that type of innovation. So I'm gonna apply next week. It's just that nobody told me before next week. Last week, sorry. So yeah. So this and the energy teleportation is another cool subject as well. Force field. That's what I want to ask Lulu or Mike because Salvatore Pais is able to generate astronomical energy. Apparently, Did you know that?
No.
No, I didn't know.
No. So I'm gonna do some research on that, and that's what I want to ask you guys if you know about it. But I think that's what I heard. He's able to generate like the energy to the level of a neutron star, apparently.
Wow. Is that
Yeah.
possible?
So
Is that even like logic? You know, that amount of energy?
well, I mean, it's possible, but not like maybe it's a pulse energy beam or something like that. A very highly concentrated energy beam that works for a fraction of a second, something like that. But apparently, he's able to. So that's something that I was planning to look into.
You know, I always wondered this. When we, like telecommunication lines, isn't that a form of power transmission? You know, I mean,
Yeah, it
isn't
is.
that power teleportation from one end to another? I mean, that that's power. I
Well,
mean,
power teleportation is very easy. All you have to do is you take energy of high frequency of low density. You convert it into energy of low frequency into but of high density, back and forth. Because low frequency can go through walls and any material. You know, radio waves they go through walls and buildings and things like that. So that's all you have to do. You take an energy beam of high frequency of low density. You convert it into low frequency but of high density, back and forth. So that's how you teleport energy. It goes through materials, anything at low frequency, but you keep the high density to keep the overall energy density. So so it's very simple. I already told the defense last year about that. It's funny nobody thought about it in 100 years, but it's pretty easy. But do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, they resonate towers in order to put out your signals for your AM and FM radio. So it's basically the same thing. It goes from high amount of amps to a very low amount of amps, but then as the amps go down, the voltage goes up, so it oscillates back and forth between the two.
Yeah, but I'm talking about electromagnetic waves, not electric current. Like,
Right, but it's going to do the same thing. It's like a Tesla coil. It's just going to oscillate, and then it's going to put electricity into the air.
no, it's not about electricity. It's really like a photon. A photon you can use to supply energy for your deployed vehicles, airplanes, and things like that. So
So I had a question, Mike. You mentioned Tesla coils, and so I was looking at some of Don Smith's interviews, and he was saying that what's really happening in his devices is he's basically putting energy into the atmosphere, into the environment, and it's just chaining the electric flow, just like using the air as a capacitor. It's like any antenna is doing. So he was saying, the whole trick is to get it to store all that energy that it's generating. And so I sort of want to get, your guys' understanding of what Don Smith was, really talking about or really doing with all of his experiments, because it really seemed like, so I told you that, the model that we have is we've got an ether and it's a vortical ether. And the vortical ether makes up all the particles, makes up all light, makes up everything. And it's continuous. It's not discrete. So the spin of all particles is continuous. They're gradations. So they, have points like a half, but there's variation in it. And when you vary it up, you're going to get more spin. You're going to get more energy, and you're going to be able to have better explosions. Biology happens better. Chemistry happens better. And so, using that model, you have the coils, in a Tesla coil. You've got all these coils that are going around the wire, so that can potentially add more spin. But just, the antenna itself is, creating more spin in the atmosphere by putting a charge in there. Just with electricity can generate that. Electromagnetic waves can go ahead and spin the atmosphere up more. Let's say, talk about HARP, HARP controlling hurricanes, that type of thing. I mean,
the Tesla coil creates a field around it that holds in static electricity. And if you don't rotate the Tesla coil field, you're going to have a very thin field to hold it in. You need it to be thickened. So you have to rotate the Tesla coil itself. And I don't mean a little spinner on top. As soon as you use the energy, it's over. You don't want any breakout whatsoever, but you want to spin the Tesla coil.
Did you see the experiments Charles Bueller was doing with capacitors? And he was creating a field, electrostatic. That's what he thought he was doing. But he turned off the field. He turned off the electricity, and the capacitors still had the same antigravitic effect. And so he couldn't explain it, but using the vortical ether model that I've been talking about, that explains it very clearly. Capacitors have this capability because you're getting stronger and stronger spin being spun out by those capacitors. And it's a spin that's creating the the antigravitic effect. So it's not electrogravitics, it's vortical gravitics, vortical ether gravitics.
A scalar wave? Like a Tesla coil, up and down the center of it.
There's all sorts of different things. So you see Milky Way's got spin in it. You got the spiral arms, you got spin in planets, you got spin planets going around the sun, etc. You have spin in particles, you have spin everywhere. It's basically a major component of what makes up the whole world. It's in the heart. The heart's got spin in it. It's literally spinning up the blood. So the whole thing is it's you're increasing spin. What's happening with the capacitors? Bueller, he's the guy that APEC is also Charles Bueller is what APEC's all excited about, and he can't explain why he turns off that field. And so you said you have to have the field. He said no, the field's gone. He still has that antigravitic effect.
Hold on, you say antigravitic effect. Are you talking about the scale itself reducing in weight, or does he actually get it to come off the ground?
He's getting less in weight, but it's equal to one G. So he's able to get to the point where it would float, but not lift off. But he's doing his experiments, and so he's got all these devices. And APEC's done numerous programs on him. The guy who's running APEC is real excited about it. He's said that it's like the top antigravitic.
Well,
right now.
I could take static electricity probably, I don't know, a few minutes, knock down a pound or so in weight on the scale, not grams, pound.
Right.
And it's not that difficult. It's just a high static electricity. But if you don't create a field out there to stop the gravity from getting to it, you're going to have a problem because it will not lift. That's why I'm asking you if it's on a scale or you got it to lift, because he won't get it to lift because he's not creating the Tesla coil field rotating.
He's turning off the field, and that's why he's scratching his head, because typically everybody expects that it's the field that's doing it. And
Is he using styrofoam?
He's using styrofoam.
That's why, because it contains a charge for a while afterward, because the effects don't go away right away, but it takes longer to charge.
No,
if you use paper, the charge is immediate, and the immediate charge comes right back off.
He's keeping this, for a very long time, and it doesn't deteriorate at all. And so it's not that it maintains it. He's been doing these tests for a long time. He's done tens of thousands of them, and he's scratching his head. Why is it still have that antigravitic effect even after everything's been turned off, even after all the field, all the effects are gone? It's the capacitors. They're charged, but that's it. And everything is
he uses really high voltages, and then he contains them inside the styrofoam, and it's creating a charge on the styrofoam that does not go away right away. It was an easy experiment to do.
He's done that tens of thousands of these. I can't give you more details on it. So
okay,
but you look at it, and basically he's scratching his head why everything's been turned off and there's no static field necessarily there. But it still has this antigravitic effect. He's going like, why?
Is the styrofoam like absorbing the charge? Is it, you know, for a while? Then that would be it. If the styrofoam is you know, containing that charge, that's where the energy is coming from after the field is turned off.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go into those details because I don't know them. All I know is that he was scratching his head because he couldn't explain it. And you know, with all the mechanisms that he has, and he's the top NASA scientist on electrostatics, and he's saying that we've turned it off. It shouldn't be doing this, and it still had that antigravitic effect. So, you know, my whole posit is we've been looking at vortical ether everywhere, and we're seeing it, and we're seeing that it has antigravitic effects. There's lots of physics experiments coming from the 50s on, you know, that's showing this. And so that it's the vortical ether gravitics. It's not, and that's why everybody's been confused, and that's why everybody's been sort of stuck, because they've been thinking that it's electrogravitics, but it's not electrogravitics. You can use electricity to have that vortical behavior, like you know, the B-2 bomber, which is supposedly antigravitic, and it's got those jet engines which have a lot of vortical behavior. And Townsend Brown, his experiments, he had these things spinning around. So there's always vortical behavior associated with them. So the posit is to explain, you know, what's going on, that it's the vortical. And there's lots of experiments of having a gravity change when you just have the vortical effect, no electromagnetic, you know, where they spin water and that type of stuff. The water wizard, Schallenberg, I forget his name. But in all these cases, it's always associated with spin, whether it's spin coming from capacitors, from crystals, actually spinning the water, or spinning a wheel, or what have you. It's all associated with spin, and they are seeing the antigravitic effects, as well as, you know, they say it affects gravity and it affects life. When you spin it one way, spin it the other way, you get gravity, enhanced gravity, but you lessen gravity going the other direction. And so, you know, I know everybody's talking about things from sort of the conventional model, but I'm saying people are not making good progress because they're using the conventional model, and they need to open up and think that besides having, you know, mechanics and electricity, you also have vortical behavior. And so, and we can leverage this vortical behavior to do anti-gravity, to get greater energy, and make these breakthroughs that people have been stuck on for a long time.
Right, we're doing that. Gerald and I, we're working on that same thing. We're creating coils in order to get the ether in the center, and it has a lot of electrostatics in it. And the more heat you put in the system, you ruin it. So you don't want a lot of amps, and it'll create a little bit of heat on the outside. The center will get ice cold, but the amount of energy goes up by 100 times. So, yeah, we're working on the same thing here, and we can get a lot more pressure put on those scales than what they're showing. That's what I'm saying. I understand this process very easily. It wasn't a hard experiment to pull together if you understand high voltage at all. You have to remove the amps in order to get the static electricity. The static electricity would charge the air inside of any captured environment you put it in, and it'll stay there. Now, the whole thing with the styrofoam is it'll contain the charge for longer. And he's probably using special paste on stuff or glue on, whatever you want to call it. He brushes it on there in order to amplify that effect. His ones that he shows at APAC are very low power. Those, the ones that I've seen, because he's still getting ions inside of them, which is a very bad thing in static electricity. It's using the power he wants to use. So he has to strip all that out in order to get the effect to go higher. So yeah, we're working on coils that contain the vortex in the center and come out with a higher amount of electricity, but it's in cold electricity. There's not a lot of circuits out there for it, and you kind of have to feel your way through building them in order to get it to be correct. But once you do, you're going to be able to pull the energy out of the system. And I don't know that it's electrogravitic, to be honest with you. It's charging a surface onto another one more than it is able to fly. It won't, If you create the amount that's higher than the actual disc or whatever you have it on, it will not lift because it has no field around it to stop the gravity from getting onto it. It's like gravity's like snowflakes. You have to be able to resonate and spin the actual object in order to get it to stop clinging onto it. And that's part of what he's missing in order to get the lift.
So explain some of the, you said you're working with coils. Can you sort of describe how you're working with coils, and it's the electricity going through the coils, or what other ways are you trying to get the vortical behavior to improve?
The electricity spins in a flow. So if you can imagine the center here is the ether, it'll go like this and spin, but it doesn't stop there as one. That's just an electromagnetic field with one turn, right? You want it to continuously spin and start new ones to spin every time. And then it creates a compression field in the center because it doesn't stop coming off. It's like putting static electricity in the air. Once you start putting it out there, you know what I mean? It's going to start filling a room. Well, in order to get it right, it has to spin. So the flow has to be correct. And when that happens, it starts to get in the center. And then it'll amplify in the center because you're not just spinning one little field. You're spinning that whole amount that's in the room through the center now. Now that vortex in the center is creating a beautiful ether that's ice cold. And it's so much energy.
So you've got coiled waters, or you actually have something physically spinning?
You don't have to have anything physically spinning in order to get the power generation.
Okay,
if you want the field on the outside, it's not just the Tesla coil field. You have to spin that Tesla coil field, or else it won't be thick enough. The static electricity will eventually pass through it, but if you spin it, it creates a thicker field to hold it in better.
So you're talking about, you've got a coil which has got a spin in of itself, but you're saying you get a spin around that coil. So you've got one coil around another coil.
Yeah, you have probably 4 coils inside of one coil stacked, and they're creating the effect.
Okay, so you're putting one spin around another spin, and then you got
so there's
sides.
Spin to the center, spin up, spin down. And depending on which side you pull is north, you can start to work the field up and down.
Okay, so you are using spin a whole bunch.
Yeah, it's absolutely there. I was just trying to make the distinction. People
Right.
think that you could just turn on a Tesla coil and hold in static electricity, and it does for a while, but then it penetrates it. It's not thick enough to hold it in yet to be usable good energy. You have to rotate a Tesla coil, actually physically rotate the coil in order to get that energy to thicken. That's what holds it in. So you don't need a containment unit. You just need that.
You're actually physically spinning the Tesla coil. Or
Yes.
Okay, so you're actually spinning the Tesla coils around.
Yeah. So there's 2 effects that go on with that. That's it. It's one coil by itself creates all the energy, creates all the electrostatics. It'll also create a Tesla field inside of it a little bit. So
the theory that and we have a science behind it. We have physical simulations, etc., computer simulations, etc., that describe how all of this is happening at the particle and the subparticle level, and that there's this vortical ether. And once you get the vortical ether spinning, that's where you're getting the real energy from, antigravitic effects, etc. So, you're saying, well, we're getting this electrostatic field. And I'm saying it's not just the electrostatic field underlying it. There's this vortical ether that you're creating. You're up a whole bunch, and you're getting a whole bunch of different vortical spins, and that's where a lot of the energy is coming from, and a lot of the effects are coming from. It's not the electrostatics. You can even turn that off because you've got the vortical ether going.
Nope.
It's closely associated with it.
Yeah, but you can't turn it off. If you turn it off, the whole effect goes away. The only way to get it is through electrostatics, and they have to be present. You will not have the field at all in the center without it. It just won't happen. That's what builds the energy in the center. In order to get that energy in the center, you must have electrostatics.
Okay, so I've got a little device here, and it's for health purposes, but it's got the same type of effect. It's got basically crystals LED, and capacitors, orgone. And in essence, it's basically spinning everything up. And there's no electrostatics behind it. So all of these have the vortical behaviors. Sound can have the vortical behaviors. We were talking about the HHO stuff, and they were using these mist makers to increase everything. So they're not just working with the electrostatics. All the components that they're working with are creating vortical behaviors, and you don't have to have the electrostatics. I know that you focused on it, the electrostatics have a major effect, but the point I'm saying is you don't have to be tied to that electrostatics. You can increase your behavior, the vortical behavior, in other ways, just like you were doing it physically. People spin water, you spin the Tesla coils. So that there's a major component of just the vortical part, and the electrostatics helps create the vortical behavior also. Just like with the HHO, they were using the electricity to stimulate it, but they found out mist makers can stimulate it and you actually get better results. So my point is there's all these other things that you can use to get that vortical behavior, and electrostatics is part of it, but there's a whole bunch of other ways of doing it, and you can continually improve by chaining all these different methods together.
Yeah, but when you get too many amps and you create an electric field, okay, with amps in it, you limit the amount of energy you can build, period. You can build it to a certain point and then it stops because you're physically using the energy. That's the difference. You're using the energy. So you created a field that has a limit. So I'm not talking about a field that creates a limit.
So one of the things that Don Smith said, he was saying you generate all this energy and then you put it in a storage device that can then be used later. And so you can build up the energy and put it into some type of storage that can then be harvested. You can continually charge it up and use it. And so that can be a way to get around this amperage, concern.
Like I said, it's how you build your electricity. If you're constantly thinking in a magnetic field, you're going to be limited. That's just the bottom line of how this thing works. That's using the energy for magnetics. You don't want to use it directly. You want to pull it from the ether without directly using it.
So I'm sort of putting this challenge to you because you have much more experience with the electromagnetic parts than I do, and I'm trying to learn from you on that part. So I'm basically saying, hey, it's the ether that's having a major effect, and it's going to be a challenge to try and get around pulling that energy out because there is a lot of energy created by just the vortical behavior. And how do you pull that out into electricity?
With a cold energy circuit, because the energy in the center is cold, which basically means you can put a wire just in the center and it's like a bleeder. It'll pull it from that energy as long as you put some kind of a draw on it. So you put a load on it on the one side, it pulls the energy out. You can run it right into a capacitor. A lot of people just say it as what's that word that everybody uses? Potential. Okay. They say the same thing, but it's ether, potential. It's all the same thing, but you have to pull it from the center and it has to be cold. As soon as you add heat to the system, you're using some of the energy. That's one of the differences on how this thing works. You have to get that load on there. So you put it right down the center, just like I could put a wire down a Tesla coil and pull a cold circuit immediately and pull the energy right out of it. And I won't affect the oscillation of a Tesla coil at all by doing it.
Okay, so it sounds very exciting, very interesting. I don't know if you have any diagrams or any videos of your device.
Oh, I do it on my gravity flyer all the time. The thing's ice cold on the center plate, but it has a ton of energy in it. So
you're putting a lot of energy in, or you're pulling a lot of energy out?
I pull a lot of energy out.
How much are you putting in?
I put in like 40 volts of energy into a Tesla coil, and then I can pull the entire amount out without even changing the oscillation on it.
Okay.
And it's not attached to anything. The wire's not attached. It basically just goes down the throat of a Tesla coil. it is not attached to the Tesla coil in any way. And I could produce a field out of that easily.
Nathan, what is the diameter of energy that it could power up, like in your vicinity? Like one time you said, like your whole garage, or like
Oh, yeah.
outside of you could power up anything in there, right?
Oh yeah, I have to do the experiments outside now because it's too much energy. It creates a static field in here so big, and when it starts the vortex in here, it starts to shut everything down. It's a massive amount of power. So you have to do it outside. Have to be away with cars. Put the cars away from where you are, because you're going to start messing with everything. But yeah, it's going to create a huge energy. So. And if you're not careful, because it continues to build, you have to shut it off for a certain amount of time, or else it's going to continue to go. Because you got to think of it. Yeah, you got to think of it as you're vortexing, like you said, the circles, okay? But it doesn't stop making new ones. That's the difference. You're not using it, so it just goes around the coil. You're never stop making new ones. So for every one you think you're making thousands every second. And it continues to build. And they all continue to go back to the center, but they're not the same energy like a regular magnetic field are. They compress in the center.
You're going to need to Faraday cage your whole room there, Nathan.
Yeah. That would be the next thing. I just do it outside. I have to go to the field next door, no power lines, nothing around. And that's where I run the experiments.
In theory, could you take that power and convert it, let's say, and give it to your neighbor to power up their house, or a few neighbors around? If that field keeps on growing and growing and growing, right?
Well, like you said, you put it right into a capacitor, right into a battery.
Okay.
It's not any different than the potential systems we build now. You're just pulling it from a different source.
You can have your own energy plant, man, with this thing. Like at the end, just if you have a large enough space.
Do you have any videos or diagrams that on YouTube or anywhere else that show some of this stuff? Or
yeah, on my channel, I put fields on a rotating Tesla just on a disc. I connect it from one disc to the next and put it right through my Tesla coil, and it'll show the field. And then I show with lights and stuff how it contains it. So I do have that. I also have charge testing on there, and I didn't put a scale on that one, but you can actually pull the charge on it, and you can look at how much pressure it's putting on it in order to do it. And I use super high voltage instead of the static electricity machines.
So what's your channel?
Old Man Builds.
Old Man Builds. Okay, that's easy.
Yeah, GCG Gerald's channel as well. It'll show you the actual coil he's working with. I'm winding one myself, but his coil, you can see the energy in the center. It's producing a high amount for the little that he puts in too. So he's pulling about 100 volts out of it, and he's only putting in I want to say less than 20 volts.
So what's his channel?
Let me grab it for you real quick. And I'll
one word, OldManBuilds.
Yeah, it should come up if you type that in.
Okay, YouTube. Okay.
It's got a little purple thing on it. There you go. I put it in the comments right there. What Gerald's channel is, because it's kind of hard to.
Oh, it's Gerald and Nathan Builders Workshop.
Yeah, we do that together. We do a live show on that, and then we also do a Monday live show. But yeah, that's the channel. It'll show the little purple thing on there. Here, I'll show you. I'll turn off my camera.
Thing I see. Oh, yeah, I see that.
Okay.
And that channel and Gerald's channel is. You have a link in there somewhere, or
I just put it in the description right here. if you look under the Gerald Nathan's workshop, it'll show Gerald's channel in the description.
In the description. Let me see. Old Man Builds. I'm trying to see Gerald's. Gerald's channel. There you go.
There you go.
Gen Lighten for Truth 2. Okay. Yeah, okay, I see that. All right.
That's why I told you to look for the link instead of trying to say what it is, because you'll
Yeah,
never...
This is not as easy as yours. You make it easy. Fantastic. Okay. That's great. I really appreciate it. I'll share it with others.
Yeah.
So I'll look for it. Great. Yeah, that's why I came today, because I, trying to understand Don Smith's stuff, and I'm trying to get a better understanding of it. And you're saying, yeah, there is a lot of spin involved in this. That's how you're optimizing stuff. So, okay. I'll take a look at how I can fit it together with the physics model that we're working on.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, Don Smith was really good, but he was very cryptic in the way he talked, right? So you had to really kind of listen twice what he was saying.
I'm hearing advancement here. I'm hearing stuff beyond Don Smith stuff. So, what Nathan's out working on, it sounds like it's more advanced. So
yeah.
Continue making progress. So, we're working on we're building on other people's work, and it's great to hear so many people doing so many different things and making advances across the board. So
yeah, I think when they figure out the causality relationship between voltage and amps, they'll finally make their breakthrough, because they probably use the circuit just to create an effect instead of changing the energy properly. So
okay, you're gonna. That's another whole question. I didn't quite capture all of it. You can explain it now if you want. Give a quick explanation of that. Short.
Well, there's a relationship here. The higher the frequency, the lower the amps, the lower the heat amount as well. As soon as you bring down the frequency, the amps increase, also the heat increases. So there's an absolute relationship between the both. So if you want to build out your stuff and you want to say it's watts to joules, well, you have to break it back down to volts and amps, because if you don't, you could set your power supply at one thing, right? And then just by changing the frequency, you can change the amount of volts and amps in a system. Then on the opposite side of it, you can also change the pattern, so the beat rate of it, or the it slips my mind on what they call it. Anyway, how fast it goes, right? So how fast the frequency goes. So if you change that, it'll also change the volts and amps.
Okay. I'll look into it. It'll take some time for me to digest what you said.
Oh yeah, I got like a whole little star chart of it, and it'll tell you between charge, which one's charged, which one's magnetic. You know what I mean? And there's a whole flow to electricity that once you figure it out, you can manipulate the circuits to do exactly what you want.
So do you have some of that described on your channel? Some videos talking about that?
Yeah, and I got somebody on there who actually verified what I did separately, and I put that on there as well.
Fantastic. That's great. Okay.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool to see somebody else take your work and verify it, man. You can see them not touch the power supply at all and just change the frequency, and all of a sudden the meters start going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Sounds great. Okay, I'm looking at some of the videos. Okay. All right, I'll let you. I'll let the conversation continue. This is very interesting. So.
Yeah, look for the one that has a little star on it that says proof of concept or proof of something. That's the one you want to look at.
Okay.
So, and it'll show you the volts and amps changing everything. So.
Okay.
Okay, I'll shut up now.
No, it's
that's good.
I did want to show Ben one thing if he's here. Ben, you still there? No, he's off doing something.
I think he went to the bathroom or something.
I'm building one of his coils he showed on the show last week. Remember that big one he was showing that we didn't talk about?
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
So it's got the It's the rodent coil, but on the inside here, it takes a secondary rodent coil.
Right.
So there's another one that builds in here, and there's a whole top plate that goes on top of this. This thing is massive.
Yeah, it's
So,
huge.
yeah.
What
Anyway,
is the material? What is the material that you're using for that?
Just PLA. So plastic. I didn't use ABS for it. I didn't want to shut off all my printers. You know what I mean? Because there's so much of this that has to be done. So you have to enclose all your printers when you start using ABS.
Yeah, apparently
And this can be 3D printed.
Yeah, it's all 3D printed so far, and I got some over here on the printers right now.
Very cool.
Apparently PLA. I did some research on PLA. It's apparently an excellent dielectric.
I'm gonna find out. I got a center plate that I got to print out. I'm gonna see when I change it how good of a dielectric it really is.
Yeah, apparently from what I've heard, it's very good. Not as good as glass, but very close to it.
Yeah, I
Do
got
you
that.
think
and I got-
it is the high pressure water jets could cut through glass to make that mold?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work on water jets, and
Yeah.
they can.
Okay.
The water jets I work on can cut through 5 inches of steel.
Yeah, those things
Right.
are crazy.
Without though cracking the glass.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It all has to do with the feed rate and how fast, how much pressure.
Very good. I'm thinking of getting a 3D printer, just to play with, to see what I can do with it.
Huh.
Yeah, like a small one, nothing big, but just to kind of learn how to, start with, just to see what if I'm good at it, then I'll invest in a larger one. But like just a small unit to see what I could do with it. That's why I was asking, what is the materials, so I can know what I need to buy.
Oh yeah, cause we got a 3D printer. You're gonna need one of
Well,
those.
I
Hey, Mike.
but I was working with different materials, and the harder materials started gooeying up a whole bunch. And so I don't know if the heating element, I don't know if I messed it up or not. I got a new part. I'm gonna haven't put it in yet. But I sort of stopped because it seemed like things were getting all gooey. And I hadn't returned to the original material, which wasn't so gooey, but it wasn't quite as strong. It wasn't quite as smooth as the other materials. So I just got a new part and got to get around to putting it in so I can continue.
Was that on a rodent coil? Is that what you were building?
No, I was doing cases for these devices that I create that include crystals, light, and orgone. All of them have vortical effects, and my voice has gotten a lot deeper. You can hear the reverberation in it because I use these devices. My colds lasted longest is like 15 minutes. They don't last very long because it
Nice.
clears out the lungs, and so there's health benefits and for these devices. I use them for health purposes, but there's in the literature and in physics books, etc., that there are physicists who collected all this information, all these experiments, and they see that whenever you have this vortical behavior, when you have spin, and they use the term spin, and there's lots of different ways that they categorize that. They have this antigravitic and life enhancing effect, where biological things, seeds growing, all sorts of different types of effects. And when the opposite direction of spin is you get gravity and less life.
Well, the anti-gravity effects, it's more of the resulting energy potential it generates. Is that what you're?
It's a huge spectrum of different experiments, and it's like the biological effects, it's like the chemical effects, it's all of them are affected when you have this type of spin that's increased. This Claude Swanson is the guy who collected all of this. He collected lots of experiments from lots of different places, and he put it in a book. He's a physicist and PhD, etc. And so that you go out and so the physics that I'm talking about is based on Paul Laviolette's stuff. He was part of our group before he passed. Small group, but he was part of our group when he passed, and he was one of the founding members of it. And so it's basically an etheric model, or as opposed to string theory or quark theory, it's a different subparticle model of how things are put together. And we run computer simulations, and we get particles to form, and we get particles to interact with each other, and we're just starting now to get some spin effect in there. We hadn't been able to get spin; we just got the particles forming. And so we have simulations, and you look at our simulations; they're sort of similar to some of the equations that people have been using, more simplified, to demonstrate the spin effects of particles, because particles do have a spin effects, and they have these formulas that do that, and their formulas match from a diagrammatic perspective very close to what our simulations do. So our simulations basically, and they say that these formulas really just can match a lot of the behavior that's seen in particles. And so we say, okay, well, our models match that too, so that you can use those, but you can use ours to basically talk about how the ether, the etherons, the subparticle level, creates particles, and then creates light and creates everything else. So it's a much fuller physical model than what their equations have, but it's got the same structure to match the experiments that they say that their formulas match. But
it sounds like NMR that makes the particle spin. NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance.
There's specific ways that they affect the spin, but there's other things that affect the spin. They're orienting the spins together so they can do some measurements, and I have not seen anybody seeing additional effects with those, or they're not looking necessarily for additional effects. They're using that to basically be able to see how different materials behave. So I haven't gotten into that. What we're trying to do is we're looking at all these different experiments where people are seeing vortical behaviors, and say, okay, how does that match our model? How can we diagram that from a vortical ether perspective? And so, we're looking at all of these different electrical components. We're looking at, capacitors, at crystals or light. How do each one of these enhance the vortical behavior? And so we're looking at different combinations of stuff. And so that's, I would try and model, let's say, the coils that Nathan's working on in what he's just described. I would try and model that using this physics, and showing, okay, how the spin is increasing in all of these cases, all of these experiments.
It sounds like Mark's experiment from the Falcon, the nuclear dynamic spin orientation of a particle. I think that it sounds like that, right? You guys from APAC?
We're seeing it in much simpler ways, just like in an ordinary dielectric next to a conductor. Because the conductor's chemical structure, all of the electrons that can move are at the top level. So when you got a conductor, it's a crystalline structure, and basically it can have like sort of a flow between all of those things. You can have electric flow, and then you have dielectric, and the dielectric's over here, and all of the particles that can move are at lower levels, and so they're being drawn up by this, the conductor flow. And so all of these particles are being pulled up, but because particles are basically spinning vortices of reacting and diffusing etherons, those vortices, they deform because they're in balance with the rest of the atom. And so, you will heard that, electrons jump from one point to another point in an atom within the shells. Well,
Yeah, the
they're not,
orbitals.
they're not jumping; they're deforming because they're vortices. They're of reacting to fusing etherons. They deform in one place, but then in order to balance everything out, they have to form in another place to keep things in balance. And so here, when you have the conducting and dielectric, the electrons are being pulled up, they deform, but in order to keep things in balance, another electron forms at the bottom, at the bottom level, because that's where the balance is. But it too is pulled up. So you're getting this continually pull of all these electrons up by that conductor. And so the what happens is that they come up, they deform to balance things up. We got new particles forming at the lower level. And so when you're forming all those particles at the lower level, you're getting more spin because everything is particles form are basically vortices. So you're getting more and more tornadoes being formed at the bottom levels. So the entire, and just like with a tornado, there's wind around it. So you're getting more and more vortical ether effect in the entire etheric space, not just in the particles, because you're forming so many of them. And the better the capacitor, the conductor dielectric variance, the greater the pull. You're getting greater and greater vortical behavior just by having those materials together.
So if you take the coil and put another coil and resonance together, you can expand the field so that you can put something inside of it, and that gets the effect of the whole thing instead of just the effect that you get around the coil itself.
You're spinning the ether. And so
you expand the field by using a second coil.
Right, you're getting the ether to spin faster and faster, and you put it in sync, and so you're getting more and more vortical ether effects, and the particles are more reactive. Everything, and from an energetic perspective, that's the electric part I'm trying to learn from you guys. But biologically or chemically, those things react faster and react better. You get better life, and you get antigravitic effects. So just like the heart literally spins the blood. I mean, the physicians say, okay, why is this closed when the heart pumps? If it's supposed to be pumping, it should be open so it could flow down, but it doesn't. The the arteries close when the heart does the pump. And so, they've looked at the shape hexadron or whatever it's called.
Hexahedron.
They actually see that, that it's basically built by everything spinning around, and they actually see liquids around that type of structure. You get this huge spin. And so you're spinning all the blood up. You're spinning all the cells, all the particles up. Mm-hmm. And then that flows around the body. And because everything's spun, you got an antigravitic effect. The blood actually goes down to the bottom of the feet. It stops. Then it starts back up. That's not how a pump works. Everything keeps going. And so because you've got that antigravitic feature in these spun up particles, then it can push everything back up to the top. And this happens with trees. They don't know how they can get the force to take water all the way up to the top or sap all the way up to the top of a tree. That's because you've got these antigravitic effects, because everything's been spun up and you've got this huge spinning capability that has antigravitic effects. Now, there's other things that happen because you have tubes, and because of the tubes, you can also have, this greater force going up, but it's all oriented around the vortical spin that's been created by the heart on the particles, and everything around it. You have these tubes with the antigravitic effect, and so it spins it up. But the people who are looking at water and some of this stuff say, oh, it's the tubes with this type of effect, and it's, we're saying, well, those
it creates negative pressure. Like when you close something, it creates negative pressure, and then when you let it go, it fills over. So the body, like when the valve closes, it creates negative pressure for the blood to flow back up. And then when it opens up, it goes down. It's by negative pressure.
It's not just by pressure. I mean, people have done the equation, and you simply don't have that force. That's actually there. It has to be explained in another way. And so it's not just pressure, and it's not just the tube's pressure, because the people who do the fourth phase of water, they look at the water properties, and it's not just the water properties underlying that, it's the particles that are actually spun up and have the antigravitic effect that can actually have the full force to send everything back up. So it's the same stuff that Nathan's working on. He's spinning everything up. So
Yep.
it's and you see it in lots of experiments across the board everywhere.
Oh, there's a ton of them. If you know how to use it, you can put it in just about anything.
Right, and the whole thing, I coined the term vortical ether engineering. It's, you've got static electricity, you got electricity that can create this behavior, you've got light that can create the behavior, you got capacitors, you got crystals, you got sound, all those mist makers. All of these things can create this type of behavior, and you can chain these things together and they have a stronger effect. And you optimize the components too, and also the physical spinning that can do it too. So there's lots of different ways of increasing the vortical spin, and people have said, oh, I can use this, I can use this, I can use this, and they say, but they're all different. Everybody's trying, well, let me try this or try that. They're all doing the same thing. They're all spinning everything up, and it's really a minor modification to the current physics model. The current physics model, they did a simplification. They made things discrete in order to do computation. That was 100 years ago. And so the physicists of today take that as, well, that's the rule, that's the law. No, it was a simplification in order to be able to handle computation. Now we have better computational tools, and we can do things. Oh, no, it's continuous. It's a gradation. It's not quantum physics where you jump from integer to integer to integer. It's gradations. So you do have the jumps. If you've seen like the cymatics, where you have, a plate and you have sound and you have sand on top of it, and you have these different sand structures that form with the different sounds, and they jump from one to the next, but there's play in them. That's gradations. And so,
that makes sense. Like the arteries and vessels aren't smooth on the inside. They have they're like that. That way, when the plasma goes through, it creates a vortex flow of the plasma inside of the arteries. So what you're saying makes sense, actually.
So the heart certainly has that huge spin. When you get down
actually, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't know how much spin is actually in the fluid, but the particles themselves have that spin in them, and so they have more an antigravitic effect. Gerald Pollack has some of these because they do these experiments, and they actually have tubes, and they can show this behavior.
It's the walls that have those things, which could help the plasma do the vortical spin.
And the walls have this sort of like a orgone or capacitor type, difference there. Like the materials used for capacitors have the best effect. The barium, whatever, there's different materials, and they're having this type of effect. So it really does appear that it's associated with, spin. Certainly the heart is, and the materials that they're looking at, it looks like that there's, this capacitance difference that would be creating this spin just in all the particles around them. And they have the water basically forms this lattices. It's not H2O, it becomes H3O2. And it's a lattice. It's a two-dimensional lattice. And they have like up to 100,000 layers, depending upon the material that they're next to. And they can literally copy, that crystal lattice around a molecules or chemical. They can do a copy. And even though the chemicals have been filtered out, those layers copy each other, and they're still in the water, and they can still see that same lattice. So they can literally maintain information. You can store information in the water, like homeopathy. So now they actually have experiments that show, there really is something still there. There's still information in the water that can be maintained by those lattices. And they're basically saying, oh, it's the water. And I say, no, it's below the water. It's the vortical ether that's allowing all of that to happen. That these lattices basically form when you have some of those materials, you're getting that greater spin so that they can have this other structure. And there's also a whole bunch of experiments showing that you get this force going through the tube to help pushing everything around. And my point is that there's also an antigravitic effect because you spun everything up more, and that's where you get the water, trees, and things like the blood flowing around in the body, etc. And I'm trying to. I've done all this research trying to collect it and put it into a video and presentation so everybody can see all the references together in one place.
Oh, right on.
These notes we've collected over the years that we've been doing our meetings on Saturdays.
It would be cool to see your machine that clears you said the lungs from it detoxifies. Yeah.
I have a DIY, and it's basically you can buy this. This is an LED type device. These are crystal plates, which are special order. These were also special order, but you can get other crystals and they work fine too. And these are special orders. Amazon actually has stuff that's maybe like 1/6 as strong, but maybe twice as big. But the better the capacitor materials, the better the effect. The better the crystal materials, the better effect. The better the LED, the better effect. Problem is, this is not programmable. The other devices that I create are programmable.
Nice.
So how do you use this? Do you place it next to you underneath the bed, or do you how is this used?
Usage is another thing, and so you can buy these parts and you can basically just tape them together. I'm trying to work on something that's more optimal thing, but I only have so much time. You turn it on, and you can put it on your eye over here to get your eyes to improve. My eyesight's improved dramatically, quite significantly, multiple times better. My colds are 15 minutes, so that's like 1,000 times shorter than a normal cold. So you can put it on your heart. It really energizes your heart. I have one by my side where I'm working. It's a couple of, maybe 1.5 feet away from me. My voice has dropped dramatically, much deeper. My voice has become bass when it was probably a tenor before. So if I get a cold, let's say I'm at work, I get a cold, I come back, and depending upon how bad the cold is, I just put it on my mouth, 5 seconds, it's gone. If it's a light cold, if it's a real bad cold, maybe 15 minutes.
Have you done like before and after X-rays, let's say, to your?
I haven't gotten anywhere to that point. I'm working on the device, and once I got something that I can actually do prototypes, multiple prototypes with, order groups of parts and put them together with, cases that are 3D printed, et cetera, then I'll have things that I can give other people who can do some of those experiments, because I've talked with some physicians, et cetera, on some of this stuff. And, they're the guys who are, they're the guys who are saying, the entire medical model we have today is not right. And so the whole medical model around this, everything about health is its energy, just like the Chinese model. Everything is energy. And so anything that enhances that energy, like, herbs are concentrated plants where all the energy is being put into a certain part of the plant. And then you can use that, or, meat, or organic meat. Okay. So these are all more energetic things. They got more energy stored in them. So any place that you can get more energy into your body, your energy is going to be spinning. Your body's going to be spinning, and those parts of your body are going to operate more effectively. So the whole model is everything is energy, and everything is the spin. And so the heart is trying to push that spin all the way around the body, and it doesn't get everywhere. Particularly,
This would, if it really works, and you could get like prototypes and like this would be a revolutionary thing in medicine.
It's not just revolutionary in medicine. It's the vortical ether energy is a revolution in all of health. And I don't like using the term medicine because it's health, because the whole medical model is very far away. It's how many diseases that they have, and it's like, no, it's the whole system that's problem. I won't go into the medicine, but it's also energy. Okay, we understand that it's the vortical behavior, and we can optimize things by adding more vortical behavior in it. But and I'm sure even with the electrical stuff, we can enhance it with other vortical behaviors too. But we have to understand the vortical part that'll help enhance everything. And so it'll import energy, anti-gravity, transportation, health. There's all these things. It would be a revolution. It will be a revolution that's as big, as bigger as the steam revolution, as the electrical revolution, as the mechanical revolution. All these things we gained expertise in, and the understanding of the vortical ether, will optimize things. Think about a pyramid. Okay, the Egyptians did pyramids, and if you actually look at it, they actually ran water through the pyramid, and they also looked like they put seeds in the pyramid. And if you talk about the Ark of the Covenant, it looked like it fit right inside those pyramids. And basically, they were using static electricity, because that's what the Ark of the Covenant really did. I don't know if you saw some of the experiments that were done by Hutchinson, where he actually built them using simpler materials. And he said, "This is
I've seen that
device."
Yes, I have to.
And so you have the static electricity, which creates vortical behavior. But you also add in big granite structure. Granite has capacitor capabilities, orgone capacitors, and they had crystal beds outside the pyramids too. So they're using this vortical ether energy for the pyramids to energize the seeds, energize the water, to have better agricultural growth. And so,
by the way, that pyramid structure, it can be done with any material. I've seen like a lot of people. Yeah, just any material, it still creates that same form of energy.
That's where I'm getting to, because the Russians did the same thing, and they're getting the effect. And so it's basic. But I'm saying you can make it even simpler. You can, use other devices, much cheaper, much smaller.
Stand by, everybody. I have it muted.
Somebody has muted.
Yeah, no, I have you guys muted. I'm getting my rodent coil ready to be presented.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
Yay.
I'm sorry. I just had to mute you guys for a minute because you were talking about stuff that I can't have on my stream. But you guys feel free to talk about that. Obviously, I just had to mute it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I understand. YouTube has, or some channels have certain guidelines on some of the stuff. You can't talk about health beyond the current overlords.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because there's a lot of cool topics that I really would like to discuss and I can't. So, but yeah,
we could transfer the topic and call it like for plant growing. How to energize the life of a plant. Not necessarily a human, but other things.
It's really sick because they're preventing the advancement of basic physics. It's like what they did to during the Dark Ages with Galileo, or in Greece with Socrates. The people today are just as problematic, and so you see the exact same behaviors as before.
Suppression of information.
They're
censorship,
which is a shame.
All right, Ben, let's see this coil. I want to see some sparks, Ben.
Hey, Ben, you still there?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm pulling it up the camera. There we go. All right. So, and then I'll pull this up here so my viewers can see what's going on.
I got you in solo here.
I appreciate it. Just bear with me for 1 second. I do have to grab the mic, move on over to my mini lab.
Are we going to see any cats flying across the room?
No, not yet. I do have I don't have the multimeters hooked up at the moment, but I will hook them up, eventually as I get more set up here. But it is running. I have as you can see, I have the new. It's the same exact AK-45 stereo amp receiver, but I got the new one today, so it does work. I just tested it out. The reference circuit and the coil circuit. So this is the reference circuit. This circuit is not connected to the coil at all, right? The coil's not even plugged in right now, but so the reference circuit goes into the left channel. It's kind of hard to see, but here, let me see if I can. So in the back here, we have left and right channel. The lighting is bad. I'm going to get a flashlight. Can I turn on the flashlight on the phone? I might be able to turn my flashlight on the phone. There we go. Oh, it doesn't work. Anyways, so it's hard to see, but there's two speaker wires sets going out of one of the left channel and one of the right channel. The left channel is hooked up to the reference circuit here, and that's not connected to the coil. And then the right channel has the coil, and then the coil's output to this circuit. Same exact circuit. It's got a rectifier with 3 diodes and a capacitor. And then over here, it's hard to see, but you'll see when I light it up. It's got 3 LEDs and a 2K ohm resistor. Same circuit, same components. Basic Arduino kit components. And you'll see in a minute when I power up the stereo amp receiver and I put a specific frequency in, say 60 hertz, what we get out of the wall, the reference circuit will start spinning at a certain power, right? You can power it up a little bit by using the gain. And you'll notice that this is spinning, but this isn't on the output, right? Because you're getting a little loss or whatever. But when you resonate the load at around 800 hertz, it flips. And this starts chugging along or stops altogether. The lights are really dim, and this is bright as heck. And then the multimeter reading confirms that it's doubling the voltage while maintaining the current. So give me a second. I'll plug that in. All right, so the black and the red wires are the input. That's channel A of the Rodin coil. The yellow and the green is the output. That's channel B. Channel A and channel B are in the same bundle of wire, but they're not connected. So we have 12 wires in series, well, technically 11 wires in series for each channel, and totaling 22 wires in total in the bundle. But the 2 channels aren't directly connected. So the input is hooked up to the right channel of the stereo amp receiver, and then we're hooking up the output to this little circuit. Remember, the reference circuit is getting the same amount of power, but it's not hooked up to the coil at all, right?
So you're showing us the difference of power from 2 circuits and how much the coil is going to be generating on it.
Yes, it's a visual, like it's an over unity visual. It's a way for you to visualize what exactly is happening when the system is in resonance versus what we get out of the wall at like 60 hertz.
Okay.
Gotta hook up the laptop real quick. The laptop is going to be my tone generator. All right, as you can see, or if you can't see, let me know. But it's 60. I have the tone generator set to 60 hertz sine wave. We're going to turn on the stereo amp receiver, and we're going to notice that the reference circuit at a certain power level, we're going to slowly increase it. Obviously, we're not going to pull it full power right away. And then we're going to notice that the reference circuit is going to power on while the circuit connected to the coil doesn't. So you see that?
Yep. Left side.
Yeah, I see the lights. Yep.
So, yep, this is spinning. Lights are on. We don't have any spin or lights on. And now I'm going to switch it to around 800 hertz and show you what happens. Set this down real quick. Bear with the camera. 800. Oh. So we have a problem with the coil. Give me 1 second. I need to check my connections. I don't think the coil is connected right. It might be a loose connection.
Yeah, it happens sometimes when you're trying to do a demo and it doesn't want to work.
Yeah, it's just sometimes the wires come loose. Like, I pulled the stereo amp out to show you guys the back, but it might have something come loose or whatever. I'll check real quick.
Look at that $10 pulse width modulator link I sent you, Ben.
Yes, I have that coming tomorrow along with the timing control circuit that Nathan recommended. So we'll get into that at some point this
I looked
weekend.
at the specs of those things. That's a good deal, man. Good deal for what it does. Being 150 watts also, I hope there's still $10 when I go to put my lab together because I want to get one or two of those things.
So I see that you did a good job of wiring that Rodin coil. I talked with Rodin. I met him at a conference, and he said a lot of people put bends in them, and you got everything nicely, smoothly running around there.
Oh, not everything is smooth. There's a couple of bends in there, but yeah, the new one will be completely smooth. I did manage to get a new frame, a bigger frame, and this is going to be a little bit neater but I am aware that you do have to have it symmetrical, and I do have imperfections, but it still works. I mean, the magnetic field, though, to be honest, I think we were having trouble getting the neodymium sphere to spin at that lower power setting, just because maybe there are imperfections in the field geometry.
So you got a whole bunch of spin and coils in your design also.
I'm sorry, you said what? You cut out.
You have a lot of spin and coils in your design also.
Yes. So there's we have 24 wires twisted in a multi-filer bundle.
And then you said you had some magnets spinning.
No, I had a neodymium sphere that was spinning in the center. With the older stereo amp receiver that was more powerful, we were able to get it to spin. But with the new one, we were having trouble getting it to spin.
Did you have greater effect when you had it spinning?
When it was spinning, I did monitor the circuit and it did generate a little bit of voltage. So I did notice a little bit of a spike on the output, but I really wasn't paying attention to that. What I was trying to do with the neodymium sphere was trying to get it to synchronize. And you know how like you see like Jack Scholes or Daniel Nunez take the neodymium sphere and synchronize it with the Rodin Coils field, and then they can take it outside of the donut and it'll still spin.
I've never seen that. I heard of that. I heard that was going on, but I never actually saw it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I heard Rodin mention that once. I'm sorry, Marco.
Okay, so give me a second. I'm going to double check everything. I'll get it working. I did have it working earlier with the app on my phone. So I'm going to try it on the app on the phone real quick just to eliminate that variable. So you'll see the camera go out or freeze.
It's crazy. So much trouble with this thing, with that new receiver he's got.
Yeah,
So you froze, Ben.
Sometimes things get glitchy.
Oh,
My laptop's been
Okay, so-
glitchy all night.
it's working with the the tone generator. Hold on, let me see if the XCam will work. So it is working. Okay, so and that's at 800. You can't see it on the phone, but I'm gonna switch to the laptop and show you in a second. So I know it does work. It's just something to do with this. Maybe the connection on the laptop wasn't solid. So give me a second.
Those 1/8-inch cables are horrible for
Very
transmitting.
temperamental.
Yeah, they don't like. You get them as short as you can get. As shorter the cable, the better, and the more money you spend on it, the better, because you want thick copper on those 1/8-inch audio. Anything to do with audio, you want a lot more copper or conductor, because it's low power signal.
Oh, yeah. It's just the connector needed to be pushed in a little bit. I think it has a little corrosion or something on the
Yeah,
inside.
they
making
all
it
do that.
tough
You
to-
got to wiggle it, something like. Oh, they all do that.
Yeah, but give me a second. I'm gonna turn the camera back on and we'll demonstrate this. This is really cool. This is like the coolest thing because it's so easy to do.
Then, when it comes to a $5 cable and a $20 cable, it's probably the one-time purchase, or at least the $20 cable will last you a few years. The $5 cable will last you a few months.
Yeah.
Pick your poison, I mean, I got buckets full of old cables. I spent plenty of money on audio cables. I don't use them anymore, even the good ones, because they're gone now. They don't carry a signal that good. You can't record with them. Can't make recordings. it was crackle or whatever, you know. Not enough signal getting
Even
through low.
old new ones.
Yeah, like even the expensive ones that I bought that are old that went bad. That's it. You forget it. It's garbage. Just keep it as
Like
a rope or
I
something.
I have so many of those from so many different devices throughout, like, let's say
You have
20
to cut
years.
the ends off and restart our new terminals. The wire from one end to the other is probably still good, but the terminals are gone.
Mm. Do they
Always.
get oxidized, or is it
No, just bending and turning, and every time you
Okay.
plug it in and unplug,
Mhm.
you're bending the wire.
I've got brand new ones, like that never been used.
Inside those cables, it's not thick wire. It's just very thin hair thickness wire. It's easy to break those wires. It's like
Oh, did it go
they do
out?
that
Oh,
for
I'm
like
sorry,
the
guys.
audio
I didn't
signal. I
realize it
think
went out.
the high frequency, the highs, they transmit through there like that. I guess maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, something like that. But at the same token, it's a great for audio, but it's very,
There we go.
they don't last long because the wire's so thin.
All right, can you see this?
And yeah, it corrodes too.
Yep. We can.
I have it at 60 hertz. It's on a very low power setting, by the way. The fan is started. It's not spinning fast, but it's spinning. The lights are dim, but they're on. But nothing on the output, right? Nothing on the rodent coil. That's on the left channel, which is not connected to the reference circuit. So obviously we're getting some kind of loss. I don't have the multimeters hooked up yet, but obviously there's some kind of loss. And then I switch it to, let's say, 800 hertz.
You speed up your frequency, your voltage should drop more.
You said what?
If you speed up your frequency, your voltage drop should be greater on your source. Whatever voltage you're feeding, you're going to have a drop on that voltage. It's going to drop.
Now the thing is not working. Hold on one second.
It's probably camera shy.
It has something to do with the tone generator, like that. Like he was saying, the cable, the tone generator.
How long is the cable? If it's over 3 feet, it's probably no good. Those 6-foot cables are the worst. I don't even buy them anymore. If I get a cable, it's 3 feet if I can do it. If I can, do it. 6 foot is, you need it sometimes, but yeah. The shorter the cable, the better.
There's different qualities of cable. I sort of pay attention to some of the cables I get in there.
Yeah, it's the cable. It's like just okay. The cable. It's just not. I had to push it in a little bit more, and I don't want to break it.
When I buy those cheap ones, the 1/8 inchers, I get like 3 of them or 4 of them at a time. Just because.
Okay, so
I know they're going to go bad.
As you can see, the lights came on a little bit on the reference circuit, right? They're a little dim. No fan because there's not a lot of current. This is spinning pretty nicely. And the lights are a little bit brighter. Not fully bright, but a little bit brighter. And this is at 800 hertz. We switch it back to 60 and it'll flip. So now what do we see? The fan is spinning now. The lights are a little bit brighter. Not, you can't really notice it that much, but a little bit. Fan is off on this side. No lights. I didn't adjust the gain at all. All I did was switch the tone.
I'm willing to bet you, Ben, that the fan that started spinning at 60 hertz is closer to the source than the fan that spins at a higher frequency. In other words, in your circuit, it's closer to the source power, the fan that spins at 60 hertz.
So they're both at 60. Well, they're both getting 60 hertz.
Didn't you say the other fan was spinning at 800 hertz and the 60 hertz it flips to the other fan?
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the fan that only runs at 60 hertz is closer to the source power than the fan that only runs at 800 hertz.
Well,
you
I
said
mean,
They flip, right? They flip.
closer to
runs,
the
the other
source
doesn't?
power. I mean, it doesn't matter because I can change these wires back here. I can flip the left to right. It doesn't matter.
I don't know. You're
it'll have
there.
the
You
same
know
effect.
how it's wired. Is the fan that spins at 60 hertz closer to the power supply on the circuit?
I'm not sure. I don't know how to answer that question, to be honest. But all I
What do you
know,
mean when it's
all I know
connected
how to answer,
in the
all I
circuit,
know
is
what
it
to tell
closer
you
to the
is
power supply.
I can switch the wires, the left and right, and it has the same effect.
No, okay. As you're coming in one way and then you switch it, you come in the other way.
So
That's what it is.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
Sort of.
yeah, I can switch the wires. It doesn't matter. It's not something to do with the circuitry of the stereo amp. I have this big one
I
that
thought
did
you
the
said
same
it flipped
thing.
when you changed the frequency, not when you switched the wires.
You said what?
I thought you were changing from 60 hertz to 800 hertz, and that's how it flips.
Yeah, so 60 hertz, you'll see the input, it gets a little bit more power than the output, like a standard circuit, right?
So when
But
you
when
switch the wire, it flips, not when you switch the frequency. The two fans.
No,
they
when
flip,
I switch the frequency from 60 hertz to 800 hertz.
then the two fans flip. One runs and the other stops.
Yes.
And what I'm
Yes.
saying is the one that starts running at 60 hertz is connected to the source power in its circuitry. It's closer to the source power than the fan that runs at 800 hertz. That fan in the circuitry is further away from the source power. I'm willing to bet that.
Well, it's only
Anybody
connected
want to put
through
money
this,
down on that?
but Mike, it's connected to this speaker wire, right?
Yeah.
And it's connected to the left channel, and there's only a left and a right, and I've switched it. I've switched the left and I switched the right. So if it's about the position of the left channel, that doesn't make sense because
Well, that could do
I've
it
done
too.
in
I
the
don't
right
know
channel.
what you're doing. You're switching the channels and the frequency at the same time?
No. But I've tested. What I'm saying is I've tested the left in the opposite. I've tested the left and the right and the right and the left. Right now, the reference circuit is hooked up to the left channel, and then we have the coil hooked up to the right channel. But I've switched it. At one point I had the reference circuit hooked up to the right channel and vice versa. So it's not about what's going into the circuit right here of the stereo amp. It's something to do with the coil.
Yeah, the coil has different levels of resonant frequency. You could go into resonant frequency at 60 hertz, and then when you step it up to 800 hertz, it could go into resonance again. So I made a device originally designed by Norman Wu-Tan. It was actually seized at the U.S. Patent Office in 1996. So I replicated his device. So when I hit about, I believe it was 60 hertz. The transformer that I was using was actually a doorbell transformer. Went into resonance. I was able to light up about 30 watts of LED bulbs. And then when I start going up on the signal generator, same input, same everything. As far as power levels, it was all the same. But the second I changed the frequency, the lights would go out. And as soon as I hit about, we're right around the 800 mark, like you, it would go back into resonant frequency and the lights would come back on again. So coils have multiple levels of resonant frequency, not just one. This depends on the hertz level, voltage, geometry of the coil that you're using. I think all that plays into factor, right?
Well, both those fans are the same coils, though. One
No, I'm
runs, the
talking
other
about
stops.
no, I'm talking about the actual rodent coil itself.
Yeah, but he's got two
They get-
fans in there. They're both the same fan.
That's irrelevant, Mike. I'm talking about the coil. If the coil goes into resonant frequency, it can go into resonant frequency at multiple different hertz levels, not just one. So That's what I
switched
think.
to a square wave. It seems to work a little bit better with the square versus
Also the type of wave you're doing. I also found square wave was more effective than pure sine wave.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
The higher
interrupt. I just
frequency goes
had to.
further in the circuitry than the low frequency.
It's like taking your Tesla coil and running radio frequency to it, and it'll resonate in certain areas. So there's like 5 or 6 you can get in an average Tesla coil fairly easy when you do testing on it with your oscilloscope.
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
Well, as I was saying, I think high frequency goes further in the circuit than low frequency. It travels further.
Well, yeah, because he's reducing the amps, so it goes through the circuit faster, and it can create a resonance in there, which amplifies his magnetic field to get the other side to run.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Well, guys, we're at we've gone over 2 hours. I'm pretty tired. I'm sure a lot of us are pretty tired. It was a great show again. Yeah, it was been a busy week. A lot of podcasting going on this week with everybody. So yeah, I'd like to thank all our viewers that are logged into us tonight. Live chat was running really well tonight. So thanks to all our guys in the live chat. And we go live again next Friday night at 9 o'clock Eastern. And I'd like to thank Nathan, Ben, Philip, Mike, Justin, everybody. We'll see everybody next week and hope everybody has a great week and happy experimenting. And we'll see everybody soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Right on. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.